All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to give you a very short overview of the work we are doing to detect malicious accounts in permissionless blockchain using temporal graph properties. So first, let me tell you why we are interested in this. So we have been seeing that there has been a lot of fraudulent activities in blockchain, especially in the permissionless blockchain such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., where people are using malicious smart contracts. For example, in case of Ethereum, they are using Ponzi schemes. They are using. They're doing gambling. They're doing various phishing activities on the blockchain, and also they're floating malicious smart contracts and then engage people to use them, and thereby creating various kinds of activities. And also money laundering is another activity that we are seeing. Now, in the past, we have done some study on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and we found that there is an immense amount of inequality in those ecosystems. So 90% of the ethers, for example, belong to only about 1% of the accounts. So we have seen also the smart contracts. There are a large number of smart contracts with cyber vulnerabilities, and they have been exploited. As we know that in one case, the DAO attack, when a lot of ethers were stolen. We have seen various activities by malicious exchanges. So we thought that it is important that there should be a way to detect when some accounts start behaving maliciously. And the maliciousness in this case, we actually look at accounts that are doing like they're designed to do Ponzi scheme, money laundering, various kinds of phishing, gambling, these kind of activities. So the question is, how do you detect these things? So the best way to detect these things is, of course, by vigilante people who actually observe certain accounts and their behavior. Now, in case of Bitcoin, this is a little bit more complex. We have done separate work on that, because in Bitcoin, every time you do a transaction, you create a new identity for the culture change address, and therefore tracking a person is more difficult. In case of Ethereum, you have a notion of account and account balance, and transactions often happen from the same account again and again, and therefore it is slightly easier. So we'll talk about the Ethereum case today. So the way we do this is by first, one good thing about this public permissionless blockchain is that you have all the data, all the transaction data you can download from the Genesis block all the way to today if you want. But since we did this work last year, so therefore our data spans till sometime in 2019. And then to do validation, we have used data until about July 2020. So past activities of accounts is a good indicator, especially if you know what kind of account it is. So Etherscan actually provides you some of this crowdsource catching of this kinds of accounts which are involved in this kind of activities. So you can use them to actually understand the behavior of phishing accounts, behavior of Ponzi scheme accounts, behavior of money laundering accounts, this kind of stuff. But also In some cases, you don't have those markers and or tags. Therefore, you may have to go without having those what we call labeled data. And in those cases, we have to use unsupervised learning. So you can do supervised learning if you have some labeled data. If you have if you don't have enough labeled data, then you have to do unsupervised learning. So, so what we found, first thing we noticed is that I already told you that we found there is huge amount of inequality in this ecosystem, and then we found that all the accounts, they have very different behaviors, and depending on whether they're malicious or they're non-malicious, their behavior changes. So the question is, can we train machine learning model to detect such activities and generate alerts? Now, this is not something that we thought about for the first time. There has been quite a bit of work on using machine learning to detect such activities. But what was missing in those activities is that they considered blockchain as a frozen snapshot, blockchain data as a frozen snapshot in time. So the time they actually collect the data, until then every block has made many transactions, every account has done many transactions on many blocks, and they actually construct graphs like which account gives money to which account. So there will be an an edge, a directed edge. If the accounts are modeled as nodes in a graph, then they will create edges. If account B gives money to account A, then there will be an edge from B to A and things like that. Now, what they have done in the past is that they have considered this as an aggregate model. That is, when they collect all the data, they will create graphs that will have all the edges. So maybe the in block number 1, B gave money to A, and block number 17,000 again B gave money to A. So you will have two edges, but it won't tell you which block and how far apart they were. So these kind of temporal nuances of these activities were not captured. So that's the main thing that we have done here, is that we said that, well, don't consider it as an aggregate graph, consider it as a temporal graph. Second thing that we have found is that when you consider these graphs, there is a lot of bursty behaviors. That is, most accounts do very little activities, but there is a significant number of accounts which do a lot of activities. So for example, in degree and out degree of the accounts. In degree means how many other accounts have given money to this account, and out degree means how many different accounts to which this account has sent money. And we found that in most cases, the low numbers are very high probability, but there is a small but not insignificant amount of activities by some accounts which do a lot of transactions. Same thing we saw this in case of out degree, and similarly we saw that inter-event time, that is time between two subsequent events by the same account. There also accounts tend to do things in a short period of time, but there are accounts which actually remain dormant after one transaction for a long time, and then they actually again do a transaction, this kind of activity. So again, the graph kind of follows what we call a power law. So another thing that we found is that the malicious accounts that are involved in malicious activities, they interact with newer accounts as time goes. So it's not normal accounts. They actually tend to transact with certain number of accounts that they always transact with. Whereas malicious accounts tend to change who they transact with, and that's what we call neighborhood. And so what we say is that malicious accounts show a very low stability of neighborhood. That is, they always try to interact with, they always tend to interact with more, newer and newer accounts, and that is something also we noticed. So having noticed all these things, we said, okay, so if we are going to learn the behaviors, we have to consider temporal variation in the behavior, and we also have to think of their burstiness, whether the malicious accounts are more bursty or regular accounts are more bursty, whether their inter-event times are more closely spaced for malicious accounts or for regular accounts. And then we also look at the neighborhood stability, this kind of stuff. And so by collecting the data set, we pre-process them to do feature construction, and we take two paths. One is a is a supervised learning path, and another is an unsupervised learning path, right? So that's basically what this picture is saying. Since this is a short talk, we'll not go into too much details, but you get the idea. Now, where did we collect the data from? So we went to Ethereum mainnet, and then, of course, the number of malicious accounts that have been marked malicious. So this is, I'm talking in the context of supervised learning. So we found about 3,000 malicious accounts, whereas there are a huge number of non-malicious accounts. So we have to do an undersampling. So whereas the regular ratio of malicious versus non-malicious account was 1:23,500, we undersampled so that it is 1:233, because otherwise with an unbalanced data set, it's difficult to actually get good results, to get generalizable machine learning. So we take so about 700,000 accounts, of which majority, 697, was benign and 3,000 were malicious. And there were two types of accounts in Ethereum, that is the accounts owned by people, and then there are accounts that are basically smart contracts. So you have to also see whether which of the smart contracts are malicious, and in which cases the individual accounts, externally owned accounts, EOS, are malicious. And as I said, that the malicious accounts are phishing, scam, hacks, etc. So we took from Genesis block till the December of 2019 data, and then we did the necessary pre-processing, data cleaning, etc. And then we did feature construction. So some of the features that have been used by attacks are burst based, and some of them are like, for example, degree. We already showed you that the degree has a bursty behavior, temporal distance has a bursty behavior, transaction amount has bursty behavior, gas price also has bursty behavior. And then we also look at in-out degree, balance in and balance out, maximum in payments, maximum out payments, gas price, and attractiveness is basically a measure of the neighborhood stability, inter-event time. Now, again, since we are not looking at the aggregate data, we are looking at the data as things go, as new blocks are added. So we are actually constructing graphs. Like every account has now in degrees that varies from block to block, right? So out degrees vary block to block. So we create these temporal graphs. And then we also take some non-time series based features, like when an account transacted first, when an account transacted last, how long the account was active, last active since, like when was, how much time has elapsed since last active, zero transactions, how many zero transactions they make, unique neighbors or unique people who interacted, unique accounts who interacted with this, and clustering coefficient, etc. So as I said that the burstiness of degrees, so it seems like from our data we found that incoming and outgoing transactions tend to be very high in number in a certain block or in two consecutive blocks for certain types of malicious activities. So here is a kind of a picture that shows that at this point there is a huge number of outgoing and incoming transactions for this account. Other times they're normally transacting, but if there are such bursts, then we see that we consider that as possibility of some malicious activity, like all-in-vain theft, for example, displayed such features. So similarly, how closely spaced are their activities? Like are they like doing activities one after the other, or they are taking their time, like doing an activity now and then staying dormant and staying activity. So we saw that the gambling accounts seem to have temporal bursts. So similarly, transaction accounts, like so there is burst in transaction amounts, and we saw Silk Road accounts had such transaction patterns. So similarly, a gas price also has similar behavior. Now, attractiveness is basically a measure of what I earlier said, the neighborhood stability. Like, do you interact with the same set of people, or do you interact with all kinds of people all the time? That's basically is measured in terms of attractiveness that we defined as this measure. We'll not go into the measure here, but you can imagine that a normal account will have more or less good stability, whereas the malicious accounts seem to be always hopping from interacting with certain certain accounts, and then they're moving on to interact with some other accounts and not staying stable in terms of their neighborhood. So this is an example of such thing. Like if you look at here, the A, so A is being interacted with a lot, and they are more or less always interacting with either with B or C or D, etc. Right? So therefore, it seems like the A has an attractiveness, high attractiveness, right? So therefore, A's neighbors is not stable, right? So it changes its partners, right? Whereas things which don't change their partners that often are least attractive accounts, and turns out that malicious accounts are more attractive. Now, I also said that certain aspects of these accounts we actually plot as a temporal graph. That is, every timestamp we actually see how many times they actually interact, or how much money they interact, etc. So with this time series graphs, we actually, but we cannot use the time series graph as it is in the machine learning. So what we do is that we actually use TS-Fresh to extract features, and TS-Fresh extracted huge number of features for each time series. So these features characterizes the time series. Then we use top 3 features with the high Gini coefficient. So that's a way of reducing features. The most significant features are kept, and then with all this pre-processing, we found a total of 59 features. Some of these features were highly correlated, so we actually removed them by doing pairwise correlations, and then we get 36 features. And then if we use some machine learning feature reduction mechanism like PCA, the principal component analysis, then we can bring it down to 28 principal components. So let's see what the results are. we look at the results in terms of accuracy, balanced accuracy. That is, how accurate it is predicting malicious accounts and how accurate it is predicting benign accounts. So, and their average is balanced accuracy. So we see that the balanced accuracy in this case with reduced features is about 87%. With all the 36 features, we can get it up to about 88%. And then with all 59 features, we get it for 88.7%. Now, one thing I should also note is that the recall values, the recall basically tells you that how much how good we are with in terms of false negatives. So false negative is means that you will be calling recall basically tells you how bad we are with respect or how good we are with respect to false positive. So which means that how many malicious accounts you are actually marking as benign. And this number here seems to be pretty respectable, that is 75+%. So which we felt that it gives pretty good accuracy in terms of as far as learning goes. We also use unsupervised learning for accounts, and the way we do that is we use clustering. And so we actually take these features, and then these features construct a vector space. With the feature vectors, we get vector space, and then we actually consider Euclidean distance in that vector space, and then see who are how many clusters we get. And if our if our feature space is good, then all the malicious guys should cluster together, and all the benign people should cluster in different separately, right? So that next time onwards, when I get a new account, I look at its history, extract the features, and then I try to see how far it is from the cluster of malicious and how far it is from cluster of benign. If it is near or inside the cluster of malicious, then we know it is malicious. If it is in the cluster of benigns, we know that it is benign. So, and to know how good my clustering is, we actually compute the cosine similarity and the silhouette score. So this is the silhouette score figure. So you see that malicious ones actually cluster together pretty in large numbers, not 100%. So using this, we have found extra 554 accounts of externally owned accounts, and 293 accounts in mixture of externally owned and all accounts. Now, what we found is that most of these accounts which have been predicted by our algorithm as malicious, they have been dormant for a while. They haven't transacted for a while, or having only incoming transactions with a very high attractiveness, that is less stable neighborhood. So in most cases, this must be either a Ponzi scheme account or it might be a phishing account. So then now how do we use this in real time, right? So the question is that can I plug in this model to Ethereum and start predicting or cautioning users when they try to interact with an account by telling them that what is the probability that the account they're going to interact with might be malicious. So for that, the question is how far in the history of the account should I look in order to make a prediction. So that's what this experiment is all about, that we wanted to look at different time spans. So daily, like what happens in a day, is that enough to predict? Or what happens in 7 days or with that account, is that enough to predict? Or should I have to look at 1 month of data? Should I have to look at a 1 quarter of data? Or should I look at 6 months of data? Or should I look at yearly data, whole year's data, in order to say whether somebody is malicious, right? Because if I make a decision based on only last 7 days of data, maybe that account remain dormant, right? So I may have to look at its behavior over a month or maybe over a year. That determination has to be made. So while doing that, what we have done is that we said that we found that lot of these accounts, they change. If I look at a certain time scale, and then if I look, so I have about 5 years of data. So if I look at this guy engaging in malicious activities in the first year, second year maybe it is quite dormant or doing nothing, or maybe doing very little, or spending that money like a normal account. So this way, malicious, something that is determined malicious over a year may look benign if you look at its behavior in the next year. And then if you look at the next year, it may again look malicious. So this kind of behavior we are seeing. And therefore, at least for about 10,000 accounts. So we assign a probability to an account to be malicious by looking at how many times it changes its level for being marked malicious, being considered malicious to benign and benign to malicious. So this we feel is that, and we found that 814 such accounts has a probability of being malicious was very close to 1. So that means that there are, and these accounts we were not marked yet by Etherscan or anybody. So what that means is that if our calculations are right, then these accounts are pretty dangerous accounts, and people should be discouraged from interacting with these accounts. But the problem with that is that we cannot really publish the addresses of these accounts, because they might feel offended that they have been marked malicious just because their behavior kind of looked malicious, right? So that is something that we have to still figure out how to better validate this, and that's something we are doing in terms of ongoing work. Now, while we were finishing this work in May 2022, we found that in the meantime, Etherscan has tagged another 1,252 accounts as malicious. So when we applied our classifier, we found that we could not get any of them detected as malicious. However, if we take 10% of them, that is 125 of them, into our training set and retrain our model, then we are able to successfully detect the other 90%. That is, all the other ones we are able to detect. Now, what that means is that the behavior of maliciousness is also very much changing. So what we learned from the behavior change, the behavior as malicious or as non-malicious changed over time, because these guys are also behaving differently, or they came up with a new way of being malicious than just Ponzi scheme or phishing, etc., because they are being marked by Etherscan. So that itself throws a challenge, because now our model has to be retrained all the time as more and more malicious accounts get flagged. So that basically is the lesson from this additional data that we got until May 2020. So that's basically what I have in terms of this. So we presented a way to detect malicious accounts considering the temporal nature of blockchain. We used graph-based temporal features, and we perform behavioral analysis over various time scales. And through that, we were able to assign probability of being potentially malicious. And we currently are working on using reinforcement learning so that model can continuously learn and modify itself, learning from the newly tagged malicious accounts. That's the last thing that I showed, that the malicious behaviors pattern also changes over time. So therefore, we need to relearn some of these behaviors. So I think that is what I wanted to say. So I will unshare so that if you have any questions, I'm going to address them. I cannot hear you.
All right. Oh, so I was on mute. Yeah. So is anyone having any question? You can fire up to Sandeep sir. He will be with us answering those questions. So anyone up? We'll wait for 5 more minutes. And I want to thank to you, sir, for sharing your phenomenal knowledge with us. It's our pleasure to have you with us in this Unchained Blockchain Security Conference. People will love you to see your sessions recorded even after the conference.
Okay, sure. Now,
Right. Yeah. We'll wait 1 or 2 minutes to if anyone is having any question, then we'll wrap around. I think no one is having any question. I think they all
okay,
understand everything. So thank you once again, sir, for joining our conference as a speaker. It's a
sure.
privilege to
My
have you with
pleasure.
us. Yep.
All right. Good luck with the rest of the conference.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, and see you, sir. Bye bye.
Bye.